Hello everyone, Justin here, and today we're going to be drawing this squirrel. So let's just start by marking in the basic shapes first. A somewhat triangular oval for the head, going down to his chest, and start forming the abdomen, the belly, and the back. Start making the tail, and these are all just rough shapes, a couple tapering parallel lines for the arms, going out to the hand, and of course we'll be putting in an acorn here. He's eating and just kind of bent over a little bit. At this point we could start refining some of the outlines, using short lines to show that it's not a smooth outline. And let's work on the eyes as well. The eyes are going to be right in the center, maybe slightly above the midpoint. And this is where you could use smooth curved lines, not forgetting our highlight, of course. And I'll just go ahead and start blackening this with my pen. All right, going back to our outline, the hairs on the head tend to be a little bit shorter, maybe, so the outline could be a little bit smoother, as opposed to the opposite end of the spectrum, which would be the tail, where the hairs are long, and the outline, of course, the contour is going to be quite rough. So I'll just continue refining some of these. Like right here, the right arm, I'm using very short lines to break up the initial layout line that we had drawn, to show that it's composed of really short hair. All right, start working on the hand. 4 fingers and a thumb that's wrapping around the acorn, and we'll just try to roughly indicate this, not going for real super hyper realism. So the key is to just suggest key parts of any particular drawing so that it shows some realism. Okay. All right, notice that I'm getting back to a very sketchy quality, especially here with the tail, and we'll refine this some more later on. Really short, really long hairs here, and trying to keep it somewhat random. Some are a little bit darker than others, and as we go over this later, a lot of these will disappear, but we're going to be drawing shadows, of course, some tonal gradients, and this will all help to capture the impression that this part with the tail is soft, the hairs are spread out and just going all over, keeping the lines fairly light. And you could put as much time as you want into this, especially with a pen drawing, where you can't cover areas very quickly with the way you could with a pencil. So here I'm just gonna do this in a more sketchy fashion. So I'm just quickly trying to put in some of the details. Now, as you go fill in the area of the tail, there are areas where the hair will be in side view, basically. So you're drawing these longer lines. And then as you go to certain other areas, the hair, remember, will be coming towards you and maybe going in different directions. So keep that in mind as you fill in the space. And here I'm actually switching over to kind of like a scribbling random line, and which isn't a big deal because that'll be hidden and covered later as we get into darker tones. So here I'm trying to be a little bit more random with my lines. Some is short, some are longer, and definitely different directions. And it helps to squint, again, as I mentioned before, squint to see what your gradients look like. Are the darker areas where you want them to be darker? And is it smoothing over gradually to the lighter areas the way you picture it to be? So try that technique of squinting. This line here for the back will somewhat disappear as we put in the darker shadows. So here I'm starting to put in some of the darker tones, partly to show where the back is and the tail starts. In this case, the tail is somewhat behind the contour of the back. And back to my scribbly lines, to get the darker tones, I'm just going over the same areas multiple times. The more layers, the darker the tones. Now we're not going to see the bottom of the squirrel or his legs, because what we'll do is we'll go ahead and draw in some grass, which are basically covering his feet. Again, I'm just roughly putting in some random grass blades, but a lot of these will lose these details later on, which is not a big deal as we put in some of the darker tones and we refine the squirrel. The focus should be really on the squirrel, not the grass anyway. Alright, some hatching lines for the belly, just to show some form, some shadow. And same thing with the arm and the head. Now there are some darker tones on the head depending on your reference picture, so we're going to try to indicate that. Now I'm not exactly sure yet how I'm going to cover this squirrel as far as how I'm going to put in some of the tonal values. Sometimes I like to just leave it fairly simple with the pen and then add the tones and color for the drawing using a pencil. So kind of a mixed media technique. So just to kind of suggest hair, I'll just add some short lines roughly in the direction that I would think that the hair is going, and slowly blend it into the shadow areas, like here. As I get into the areas that are hit by light, the lighter areas, I'll go ahead and make the lines a little bit more random and far apart. Here I decided to just do some squiggly lines to show the form. You could use short lines just like we did with the tail, but here I'm just going to use random sketchy lines, and you can see how random it is. I'm just going all over and basically determining how much I'm scribbling based on the tonal values that I want. So we're getting into the really darker areas here. So I'll just continue adding layers, trying to get a nice gradient from the light of the upper back to what will be the darker tones at the bottom. And I'll probably just go ahead and switch over to Sharpie to get some really dark blacks here. So let me grab my Sharpie and start coloring this in. Now notice that the separation between the Sharpie and my midtones is quite stark, but no worries. What we'll do is, like right here, I'm just gonna go ahead and start blending that in. So a lot of layers of scribbling random lines right next to the Sharpie, and then I'll slowly blend that in to our midtones so it's not as stark. As I mentioned before, it's really good to have variation in your line just to make it a little bit more interesting and make it more pop out a little bit better. And that's what I'm doing right now with this ultra fine Sharpie, which is the finer Sharpie. It all depends on what your style is. So try different techniques. I'm gonna leave you'll notice that I kind of smoothed out the outline of the body and the head, but I'm gonna leave the tail, of course, as far as outlining, because I want it to look light and soft. So that's my whole idea as far as that goes. So we're pretty much done. I'm just gonna do a little bit of work on the grass, and we should pretty much be done. I'll try coloring this maybe with color this digitally and kind of show how it would look. Otherwise you could just leave it black and white. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you got something out of this, and if so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video. I try to upload every day. Thanks and have a great day. Bye.